Good afternoon. We are pleased to present our plan, Fixed in Flux, Eagles Island through Dynamic Eras. From our initial meetings, it was clear that stakeholders sought a park design that supports regional connection, stewards a healthy ecosystem, and celebrates Gullah Geechee heritage. As we considered how to achieve these goals on this site, our team realized that a truly resilient design would embrace the dynamism of Eagles Island. Eagles Island has a rich history that has seen the land shaped for human use, but its ecological character is also rooted in change as a tidal freshwater marsh. From daily fluctuations in water level to large-scale alterations in landform, the only constant on Eagles Island is change. It is a place that is fixed in flux. One of the most significant drivers of change at Eagles Island is sea level rise. The latest NOAA projections published in February 2022 indicate that sea level will rise at least 1 foot by 2050, regardless of interventions to lower greenhouse gas emissions. For us, sea level rise is not an existential threat to the island as much as it is a condition to design with. Sea level rise is often framed as a conversation around loss, but we see just as much value and opportunity in land that may become inundated as the dry landscape. Because of this, we take a long view approach by designing with time and change in mind. Our strategic responses adapt to future conditions, ensuring that Eagles Island will be accessible and enjoyable for current and future generations. In 2030, we focus on increasing access to the island, taking advantage of vulnerable landforms, and setting up future interventions. In 2060, we introduce access and programming in the dredge spoils, which will be particularly resilient as sea levels rise. Our plan for 2090 embraces the water with new ways to access the visitor center and dredge park and new amenities within the rice canals. To increase island access, especially as sea levels rise, we are planning for a ferry system to travel around Eagles Island and provide access to each park area. To enter Eagles Island, several access routes have been established that use pedestrian bridges, ferry stops, and personal watercraft to bring people across the rivers and into the park. Our plan also celebrates regional connections by tying into the Gullah Geechee Blueway Greenway Heritage Trail and building a greenway to connect New Hanover and Brunswick counties. Our team has divided our focus among 3 primary areas: Battleship Park, the Remnant Rice Canals, and the dredge spoils. We will address these areas not only in the present, but also in the future to show the opportunities available to the park as the environment changes. And we will begin today with the Visitor Center and Nature Walk at Battleship Park.
How land is used is all about choices. Whether or not Eagles Island ever becomes a nature park may rest on how its high ground is considered, as development for short-term gain, or as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to conserve a place for future generations to enjoy. I'd like to take a few minutes to show you what that latter option looks like. You've arrived. Eagles Island Nature Parks begins just beyond the newly redesigned living shoreline landscape at the Battleship, North Carolina. Abutting the Cape Fear River, a nature walk made from sustainably sourced and manufactured Akoya deck boards and stabilized shell tabby welcomes first-time visitors and year-round users alike. Let's take a trip through the park, which connects visitors from here at the Battleship all the way to the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. The first phase of the Visitor Center and Nature Walk begins with a 1,000-foot shell tabby path from the ferry terminal. An observation and education deck shares the history of how this island came to be and its unique relationship with the commerce and industry of downtown Wilmington. Another deck gives the first glimpse of the Visitor Center, a state-of-the-art building constructed above the 100-year floodline. A later phase of the nature park affords the chance to explore shipwrecks at a covered observation deck and weave through black ash and pond pine in a forested scrub wetland on a quarter-mile nature walk. A half-mile boardwalk links pedestrians from the Visitor Center to Battleship Road. The third phase imagines the decommissioning and replacement of the existing Cape Fear Memorial Bridge, on which 62,000 vehicles cross daily. As a new bridge is constructed to the south, to accommodate the projected 100,000 daily vehicular crossings, the old bridge can continue to function as a key linkage to pedestrians and cyclists visiting the park from Wilmington. A proposal for a 6-story hotel that lacks a bulkhead and sacrifices a parking deck to floodwaters is on the table. Is this the best and highest use of the Cape Fear's West Bank? We believe Eagles Island deserves to be treated as a natural system, rather than a series of parcels from which value is extracted. The highest and best use for this part of the island is a visitor center and nature walk, practically located on high ground, linking to a major tourist destination and future pedestrian bridge, providing spectacular views of downtown Wilmington and opportunities to fish, discover history, and encounter shipwreck remnants. Nueces flooding is a serious concern for Eagles Island. This area is experiencing it 80 days of the year. The green area denotes land that will not be inundated under a 3-foot sea level rise scenario, according to NOAA data. Siting the buildings on the site's highest ground and ensuring the floor plates sit well above the 9-foot base flood elevation is crucial to this plan's attitude towards resilience. The nature path is sited to follow the land's natural ridge, and boardwalk pilings are treated for saltwater immersion. Other analyses that influence design decisions include the condition of the shoreline, the remnants and former locations of structures and shipwrecks, and compelling views within the island and beyond it. Ultimately, this analysis justifies the concept and strengthens the relationship between the visitor center, nature path, and this unique corner of the Eagles Island Nature Park. Let's take a closer look at some of the unique moments you can have here in the park. At one time, the Eagles Island waterfront was the premier producer and shipper of naval stores, products such as tar, pitch, and turpentine, obtained from the region's pine trees for use in maintaining wooden sailing ships. History Overlook brings the past to present, featuring a living exhibit of the longleaf pine, an internationally recognized endangered species. History Overlook peers across the Cape Fear River, and visitors reflect on how Wilmington and Eagles Island have always been closely linked. In the heart of the nature trail, the boardwalk and shell tabby paths converge at their midpoint. Regular joggers find their ideal loop between the two surfaces, and families visiting with children wander to the wetland's edge to hear frogs and keep an eye out for shorebirds. These trails are a place to come once on a field trip or every week on a long bike ride or walk. Annually, the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge carries nearly 23 million vehicles across the river. This is likely the last decade that will be true, as WMPO, NCDOT, and others determine plans for a replacement. So rather than demolition, the bridge should be repurposed for human-powered trips. Pedestrian access to the bridge would fundamentally change the people's relationship with Eagles Island. Imagine the Eagles Island Half Marathon or Eagles Island Triathlon taking place there. Reinterpreting the bridge's decommissioning as an opportunity to improve access is crucial to connectivity on Eagles Island. We'll now transition to Eagles Island Visitors Center, designed by architect Hassan Shatta.
The new visitor centers got its inspiration from the old waterfront warehouses that used to be in the island and around the city of Wilmington. It is located on the east side of the island on the high ground above base flood elevation. It reflects the history of the site with an iconic style. The building is meant to create a visual connection with the atmosphere of Wilmington. An observation tower is added to create a unique vertical experience during a visit to this site. It offers a panoramic view of Wilmington and of the island. It also creates the visual balance and evokes the visual memory of the smokestacks that used to be located close to waterfront warehouses. The visitor center is divided into two buildings. The first one is the main visitor center, where it has a small gallery, display rooms, and office. It targets the visitors of the island and those who are interested in knowing the history of the island. It also contains a kayak storage for those who would like to go kayaking. The kayak storage contains around 24 kayaks for visitors. The buildings are sited 14 feet above sea level. A metal roof and the cedar cladding are harmonious materials with its surrounding environment. The observation tower is 8 stories high, exactly as tall as the proposed hotel, providing both panoramic views to the surrounding city and the visual landmark to anyone along the river where to find the visitor center. The second building is more about gathering. It targets visitors and the residents of the region. It also has a deck to accommodate hundreds gathering for weddings and parties. It also stays open after 5 p.m. and can be reserved. Its goal is to activate the Cape Fear River front. And here's an accent that shows how the building is being built. From the bottom up, the kayak storage area and the launch is made of tappy aggregate concrete. Above is a coastal foundation rated for Category 5 hurricanes. The framing is made from galvanized steel, supporting exposed cedar rafters, evoking an architectural qualities similar to those seen in the region historical churches. The space between buildings separates the program of each, but also the visitor experience. The building's elongated warehouse shapes frame a view of Water Street and historic downtown Wilmington. Operable window shade reduce solar gain from the south facing walls and provide the ability to control shade within the building. A first-time visitor to the island can rent one of the 24 kayaks and take guided tour from a park ranger. The water is perhaps the best place to admire the unique aspect of the island, and the kayak launch creates a chance to flow into a new experience.
We'll now transition to the remnant rice canals, home to dynamic ecosystems rich with Gullah Geechee heritage.
As sea level rises around Eagles Island, the area will undergo a significant ecological transition, shifting from freshwater emergent marsh today to saltwater marsh with a 1-foot rise in sea level, to unconsolidated shoreline, also known as mudflats, when sea level rises 2 to 3 feet. Each of these ecosystems has distinct plant communities, as well as distinct environmental benefits, like nursery area for fish species, filtering sediment for improved water quality and acting as a barrier to waves and flood impact, or sequestering carbon and supporting diverse wildlife. This design takes cues from these ecological transitions to define program themes at each stage. Phase 1 focuses on education and exploration of the rice canals in the freshwater marsh, and as sea level rises and saltwater intrusion begins to change the makeup of the ecosystem, studying the salinity levels of the water and supporting the marsh habitat will be added to the Eagles Island programming. And finally, as mudflats become the predominant ecotype within the rice canals, programs will be added to remember Gullah Geechee heritage and restore environmental benefits. Phase 1 encourages visitors to explore the unique landform of the remnant rice canals and honors the history of these spaces. We will educate visitors about those who built and worked within the canals using interpretive signage throughout the trails. Content of these signs will be developed in partnership with the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor to help realize the vision of the multi-use Greenway Blueway Trail. We will partner with at least one park each in Leland, Navassa, Belleville, and Wilmington to create a boat share program that makes exploration more accessible for visitors. Boat shares follow the bike share model, allowing visitors to rent kayaks from one park and return them at any other boat share location. Tours on motorized watercrafts will also be available to accommodate different physical abilities. To ease navigation, Blueway trails will be mapped and marked within canals using a color coordinating system similar to that used in hiking trails. Along each trail, kayakers will be able to rest at floating docks that we call paddle pauses. These places of rest will offer paddlers docks, shade, seating, and space to accommodate a variety of activities along the paddle trails of Eagles Island. These paddle pauses utilize a system of modularity to provide a more adaptable design in the changing environment of the area. The modules have a simple design and are a wood construction, making them easy to produce. The overhead structure, bases, and seating can be combined in various ways to allow for different experiences. A combination of just 4 modules creates an intimate structure that allows small groups or individuals to picnic, camp, or rest. A slightly larger configuration might just be the perfect stop for a guided kayak tour to take a lunch break. Further expanding the paddle pause could create a structure large enough to accommodate a class for a field trip. And further expanding the paddle pause could create a structure large enough to accommodate a class for a field trip. These modules could be anchored in two ways. Pilings keep the paddle pause in a single location, but are a more intensive installation. An anchor and chain setup may be less invasive on the water system, but the paddle pauses could shift slightly in location. Both accommodate fluctuation in tide levels. The paddle pauses would support the efforts of Phase 2 of the Remnant Rice Canal program. As sea levels and water salinity rise in the area, these pauses could become centers of monitoring and research. The freshwater marsh of Eagles Island is a unique ecosystem in the area, but characteristic tree, shrub, and some grass-like species will not be the most tolerant of increased salinity in the water. Saltwater marsh offers its own beneficial qualities, including even the ghost forest that comes from salt-intolerant trees, but we can support the transition to saltwater marsh with plantings of foundational species like Spartina alterniflora to target disturbed areas and prevent colonization by invasive wetland species. Phase 3 of this design recognizes the poetic justice and the climate-related fate of the remnant rice canals on Eagles Island. The Gullah Geechee people celebrate a spiritual connection to water, which, among other roles, carries the souls of the departed back to their African homeland. It seems important, then, that water should be allowed to subsume the rice canals that were once areas of toil and suffering for the Gullah Geechee people. One option to ensure a connection to the Gullah Geechee people in the future is a proposed boardwalk that uses the rice canals as a base for its design. Each rice canal cuts a line across the land. These lines were simplified to create the plan for the raised boardwalk that has areas of seating and educational signage. This allows us to remember the history of the landscape while we walk the path of Gullah Geechee ancestors. Almost 4 miles of boardwalk also creates an opportunity to restore environmental benefits that may diminish with loss of vegetative cover. Mainly, oyster and other mollusk-supporting structures can be integrated into the pilings of the boardwalk, creating reefs that improve water quality and can buffer against strong wave action. And now, from this culturally significant space in the northern portion of Eagles Island, we will move south to another distinct landscape with its own unique story.
As we learned about this project, we realized that the southern end of the site, the dredged spoils area, is too valuable to ignore. This site is the size of Central Park, and though we explored many programmatic elements, we did not endeavor to design every element in the short amount of time we had. We primarily focused on 2 sites and structures that speak to the unique time and place that is Eagles Island in the 21st century. This land, higher in elevation than the rest of Eagles Island, was created by waste, sediment dredged from the bottom of the Cape Fear River. It is literal wasteland with toxic soils and a surreal landform that reveals the heavy hand of humans in shaping our world and natural systems, an embodiment of the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is an era not only defined by the dominance of human influence over our environment and climate, but also by solastalgia. Solastalgia describes the experience of homesickness brought on by environmental changes happening in our home places. Sea level rise, environmental degradation, destructive hurricanes. Our hope is that this site can support healing for both humans and natural systems in this time of solastalgia. Rather than anxiety about the changes occurring in our environments or grief for the land that has been lost to rising tides, we hope to inspire a sublime connection to the natural environment through surreal spaces that invite visitors into awareness of their place within the larger landscape. Through the forms we've designed, we are providing fixed frames that highlight the fluid nature of the environment and the fact that change is the only constant. Before we dive into our designs, we're going to give you a little more context on the dredged spoils site, what it is, why it matters, and how the community might approach this transformation.
The dredgescape at Eagles Island is a landscape directly tied to all contained within the Cape Fear watershed. The steady flow of the Cape Fear brings sediment from as far as Greensboro and gradually deposits it into the Wilmington Harbor. To continue the viability of the harbor, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers then organizes annual dredging runs, depositing the sediment onto the southern tip of Eagles Island. While all of Eagles Island has a history of being shaped for human use, the dredged spoils area has been altered beyond recognition from its pre-colonial state. The distinctly readable object in Wilmington's landscape is no longer one made from the gradual sculpting of the Cape Fear River, and instead is the one shaped by the human and machine, a landscape of deposit. The site is divided into 3 active cells of disposal, each over 200 acres. Cell 1, 230 acres, Cell 2, 260, and Cell 3, 265. The disposal area is of a massive scale. If downtown Wilmington sat inside the dredge spoils berm, it would hold everything from Riverfront Park to Greenfield Park, the entire length of 3rd Street. And if the ring road was stretched linearly, it would reach from Longleaf Mall to Belleville. Unintentionally, these years of deposit have created a landscape roughly the size of Central Park that will withstand the effects of sea level rise over the upcoming century. With that being said, it remains a landscape of flux. Global warming has led to a northern creep of hardiness zones, and increased salinity tied directly to dredging is leading to marsh migration that is creating a new ecology on Eagles Island.
These large-scale shifts make it essential to design for resilient public space, and that requires strong and diverse partnerships. This timeline gives a broad estimate of when important actions would need to take place and who might be involved. Remediating the dredge spoils requires action by the Army Corps of Engineers, which must be initiated by the community. So an important first step is getting the community to understand the potential of this site and why remediation is so important. The dredge spoils are a nesting ground for a significant number of bird species, but the soil is contaminated, posing a risk to wildlife that use it and having other economic and health impacts. Heavy metals can seep into groundwater and into the river, having food chain impacts that affect both wildlife and humans, resulting in short and long-term effects on human health. The Army Corps of Engineers is still using the site for dredge storage, but it will be decommissioned in 2032. According to the Army Corps Environmental Assessment, the levels of arsenic on site are above critical ecological thresholds, so we suggest soil remediation after decommissioning, which could be achieved by roughly 15 to 20 years. We propose remediating the site with biological tools such as plants and fungi. After remediation, we propose leaving the unique and surreal landform created by the dredge dispersal process, a landform that evokes a distinctly human hand and also recalls the historic use of the site for rice cultivation. Over time, we would create essential, healthy habitats with plants native to the coastal plain. It will eventually seem wild, but the land will maintain the characteristics of prior ecological disturbance that recalls the history of this unique space. One such characteristic is the perimeter berm, which sits at 24 feet above sea level, creating a distinctive condition in the relatively flat landscape. For our master plan, we envision a series of destinations along the perimeter path that follows the berm, mediating between the outside world and the interior of the dredge spoils, as well as trails that lead through this surreal landscape. We designed 2 sites that speak to the grand scale and delicate balance between the highly constructed environment and the crucial ecological systems at work. We maintain this contrast through echoing the site's unique history as a space that is both structured and wild, fixed and in flux.
Wilmington has a wide range of infrastructure used to traverse the landscape created by the confluence of the Cape Fear and Brunswick rivers, but currently none of this infrastructure is designed for humans. Looking at data from the activity tracking app Strava, the disconnection between Brunswick and New Hanover counties' recreation networks becomes apparent. A series of projects have been proposed or discussed that potentially affect the way humans move around and through Eagles Island. These projects include the Gullah Geechee Greenway, expansion to the Belleville Riverwalk Park, Alligator Creek restoration, and lastly, changes to the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. We are proposing a pedestrian bridge that looks to tie into all of these proposed interventions, creating the first land connection to Eagles Island designed specifically for pedestrians and cyclists, and reconnecting Brunswick and New Hanover County. The pedestrian bridge looks to utilize Belleville Riverwalk Park's existing infrastructure while also using space's energy to create a lively threshold into the reclaimed landscape. The bridge is a linear extension of the northern berm that will connect the future Gullah Geechee Greenway to the remediated dredge spoils and eventually Wilmington. A series of spaces oriented to call out views across the landscape are imagined as an extension of the existing amphitheater and park, providing moments of pause along the bridge. The bridge sits lightly along the top of the dredge soil containment berm in Belleville Riverbank, a horizontal datum of 24 feet, revealing the years of deposit that has turned a functioning tidal marsh into an upland ecosystem. A modular structural system gives a sense of space to the bridge while allowing the future reconfigurations and acting as a supportive frame for unintended or unimagined uses or users. Its utilitarian functionality asks its users to claim it and imagine its future. Within the park, a series of pavilions act as nodes along the outer berm path. Imagined similarly to the bridge, these pavilions, through materiality, scale, and utilitarian nature, are meant to evoke a sense of machine, abandoned from the site's previous users. These pavilions symbolize a greater understanding of the site as a place where humans and nature are simultaneously reclaiming a place that is inherently both utopian and dystopian. The modular system is stretched to its most poetic meaning as it becomes a rectangular frame that emerges from the northern berm out of the marsh landscape and deep into the rewilded interior. A series of spaces organize themselves along this frame, offering moments for users to stop and engage with the present and changing ecologies. The light intervention bisects the canaled interior landscape, allowing users to observe the range of experience present along the platform that never varies in elevation, again providing the datum to read a landscape in constant flux.
Moving down to the southmost point of the site, we're proposing a sculptural land art installation called The Wave, and a pier that winds its way to the current edge of the water at the confluence of the Brunswick and Cape Fear rivers. The wave shifts depending on the perspective from which you see it, appearing at turns opaque and more transparent, both fixed and in flux. Echoing the naval ships that were once built on Eagles Island, The Wave is a destination that dramatizes the role of industrial activity on this renaturalized landscape. Made from metal pipes with CNC routed holes, The Wave creates harmonies based on the prevailing winds of the site, transforming into a sound sculpture that is both eerie and enchanting. The multi-layered sensory experience calls visitors into the present moment and provokes a sense of awe and wonder. Like all designed objects, we can imagine many intended and unintended uses, from campers waking up early to go bird watching on the elevated walkway, to birds themselves nesting in the sculpture. Guided outdoor education experiences such as birding and astronomy tours can educate the future generations about the significance of ecological systems, this unique landscape, and of their place in the world. Spaces like the ones we've presented today provide many scales of individual experience and have the potential to encourage engagement with this complex site, transforming this landscape of waste into a destination for locals and visitors alike. While the changing climate and sea level rise are often framed as conversations around loss, our plan for Eagles Island conveys a unique opportunity for park stakeholders in this uncertain future. You have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a park that countless generations will treasure. Thank you so much.